Bobby V, great to talk with you. How are you?
Good, Maggie, Moose. Good to be with you. Listen to you guys all the time. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so if we were a fly on the wall watching a baseball game with Bobby Valentine, and you're watching the umpires checking the pitchers as they're leaving the mound for sticky stuff, Bobby, what's going through your mind? How are you reacting to that?
Well, it's been 5 decades of watching this stuff. I remember 1971. I was a 21-year-old. I was playing shortstop at Candlestick Park. Bill Singer, a good friend of mine, was pitching, and he happened to always put a little of that greasy stuff in his hair. He struck out Willie Mays. He struck out Willie McCovey. There was an uproar on their bench. Everyone was yelling. Finally, the umpire came out, Al Barlick, and he walked out to the mound, and he took his glove off. He took his hat off. He rubbed it around. He put his hand in his head. And when he did that, I went, oh, my buddy is going to be in trouble. And as soon as he did, he handed his hat and his glove back. He looked over at the bench where Charlie Fox was and said, I can't find a thing. He took one step towards home plate and then looked over his shoulder and he said, wipe some of that stuff off in between innings, will you? So,
wow.
Once again, to all of a sudden think that this is this new and I gotcha, I caught you situation. If in fact and I think it is a situation. I think, it now has gotten to a level where it's more sophisticated, with the grease and even the scuffing of the ball and things like that. There was always a little that was left to chance. It might move the wrong way. It might tumble instead of spinning and it wind up in the seats. But I think with the real sticky stuff that gets you definite more spin, it's probably a situation, and I swear it could have been handled so much better than calling timeout and searching everyone as they come off the field.
Yeah, and that's the issue, Bobby, is that, you look at Rob Manfred in baseball, first off, the lack of, doing this to pitchers middle of the year, having them make the adjustment, now having it out there for everyone to see, and some of these embarrassing moments. I mean, hell, yeah, the Met pitcher McGill the other night, standing ovation, walking off the mound, getting because the Mets are desperate for a starter, and they're checking him and checking his belt, checking his hat to where the boos start to rain down at Citi Field. It's just a terrible look for Major League Baseball.
Yeah. At the end of the day, only the guilty are guilty. And when you do something like this, it implies everyone's guilty. And then you hear the innuendo. And for some reason, and I've never been able to figure this out, why baseball decides that if they have dirty laundry, they have to hang it out in public. The other sports, what the heck is that? You mean to tell me there's never been a football player who's, 6'9", 350 pounds, running a 4.4, maybe doing something that he shouldn't be doing? But do we get to hear about it? Is it a major situation? No, they handle it behind closed doors. And I just, for the life of me, can't understand why baseball decides they have to tell the public that we're just bad people. We're cheating all the time. It's beyond me.
Yeah, there's just a romanticism around baseball, I think, that the other sports don't have that, and they'll say it's because of transparency, Bobby, but nobody believes the other side. So the transparency, no one actually believes they're being transparent. So here's my question, though. Did you think that it had reached such a tipping point with, like, the real sticky stuff, the stuff that's definitely giving the pitcher an advantage? Had it reached such a tipping point that they had to make a move mid-season, or do you think they could have just waited it out and tried to address it in the offseason?
I think they knew about it last season. And I don't think it was the tipping point mid-season all of a sudden. I think there was some concern about the lack of offense for sure. And, just like juicing up the ball without telling anyone and doing something like this, they thought maybe, we'll get through another year until we get to the CBA and then we'll deal with it at the CBA. But again, no, I don't think that it was such a big issue that it couldn't have been controlled, in-house. The hitters could have told the pitchers on their team, hey, listen, it's not happening anymore. And you know what? It wouldn't happen anymore. I guess, unless it meant the contract.
Yeah,
Always
Bobby,
that money.
Yeah, let's move over to the Mets here a little bit. Rojas, Maggie and I, we talked to Met fans a lot early in the season. Met fans calling up critical, maybe some of the decisions Rojas has made in the dugout. I think Luis has done an amazing job. Maggie and I both, dealing with all the injuries, the changing of the lineups. I understand not every decision is going to end up being the correct decision, but what do you think how do you grade out the job that Rojas has done in that dugout so far here for the Mets year 2?
Well, I told him personally, he gets an A+ from me. I watch just about every game. If I don't see every game, I watch the highlights. And I think it's just been spectacular. It's not just the idea of the injuries, but it's the way he's handled the injuries. Every other team complains about him, uses them as an excuse. I've never heard that from him. He's been transparent with every situation that's come up, and he's put out a lineup. Most of the time, the lineup, and it's funny because I don't want everything to reflect on me, but when I was managing 20 years ago, what everyone always complained about was that I used so many different lineups. I remember headlines in newspapers saying, a new lineup again. And, that's because when one guy comes out of the lineup, you want to have the kind of same fluency, the same kind of balance in the lineup with that one person out. Well, Luis has not been able to put a balanced lineup out there. It's kind of like the manager who says, I like to use my bullpen when I want to use them, not when I have to use them. The same thing goes for your bench. You want to use those guys when you want to, when you want to give a guy an off day, you see a good matchup. That hasn't been the case this year. He's used guys when he's had to use them. And because there's a simpatico on that team, attitude filters down from the top. And I think that his attitude, not only of calmness, but of the enjoyment of his players having success. He likes to see his players do well. Of course, who doesn't? But that attitude goes with all his players. I think his players like to see their teammates doing well. And, that's one of the keys to success.
Yeah. I mean, this team always had a pretty good vibe around it. I mean, I go back to the relationship, I think, between Pete Alonso and Dom Smith, which was really competitive and could have really been like you versus me, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. And they were such good friends and pulling for each other in what seemed like a really genuine way. I think it set a tone, and I think Francisco Lindor and his attitude has been a good thing for this clubhouse, too, even though he hasn't been here for very long. Bobby V is our guest. We'll get to the Stanford mayoral election in just a second, but we were wondering if you were running on a platform of no DH in the National League. But anyway, Jacob deGrom. So he's on this historical run, and it's incredible what he's been able to do. But at the same time, Bobby, he's dealt with a couple nicks and bruises and things here, having to take himself out of games a couple times. What would be the conversations you would be having with deGrom as he's going for history and wants to be there for his teammates, but also is, dealing with shoulder, elbow, side? It's been a couple things that have popped up so far this year.
Well, he's a special player. He's a special person. I don't think that there's advice that Jacob deGrom could get that would do anything but hinder his progress. He's free-spirited. He probably has a little different regiment than most of the other players because he does his thing. And you could see it in his eyes. You could see it. The first game he pitched, I was lucky enough to do for SMY, the pre and post game. It was against the Yankees. He might have given up 2 hits in 6 innings or something, but he fielded his position. He turned a couple double plays. He bunted for a base hit. He got a base hit to left field. He ran the bases. I said, whoa, this guy's different. He reminded me of the Atlanta staff that I had to deal with all those years, who just went out there and found a way, did something to beat your butt. And then he elevated his level of excellence in a way that I've never seen anyone do. I mean, I had Nolan Ryan as a 39-year-old to like 44-year-old, and I saw him progress a bit. But the progression that Jacob deGrom has made has got to be attributed to him and his uniqueness. And so when you say about what would you tell him, I would make sure that nothing's being said to him that will keep him from doing anything except for what he knows he needs to do. And probably he's the only one who knows what that is.
Bobby, I want to ask you about a player away from the Mets, because your familiarity, having been successful manager a number of years over in Japan. Are you surprised about, we talk about historic seasons that deGrom's having. What about what Shohei Ohtani's doing for the Angels? Not only pitching, hitting home runs left and right. He's the MVP of the American League up until this point in time. Are you surprised at just how good he is at both as a hitter and obviously as a pitcher?
Well, when he came over, everyone asked me what the story was, and I said, he's superhuman. He's different than anything we've ever seen, that he could do both pitch and hit, and that he'd hit balls like no one's ever seen, and he'd be able to pitch on the mound as well as anyone out there. And we didn't get to see it because of the injuries for the last few years, but this is who he is too. And he's unique and he is special, and no one needs to tell him what to do because he gets what he's supposed to do. I think this home run hitting contest, everyone's getting up in an uproar about it. I think it's a walk in the park for him. Because he
what about
he
Pete
probably
Alonso,
has had
Bobby?
it in his mind since he's 20 years old. I have to go over there with that home run hitting contest. And the other thing about him, and I'm very familiar with their general manager, who's a son of one of my best friends. He says he's that special guy in the clubhouse on the bench. He pulls for everyone else. He genuinely enjoys other people's success, and he doesn't want anybody worrying about him. All he wants to do is do what's best for the team, and he thinks hitting and pitching is what's best for the team.
Man, now we know why the Yankees and Brian Cashman were so devastated when Ohtani decided to go to the Angels and not to the Yankees. Bobby Valentine is our guest. Just a couple more minutes with you, Bobby, and thanks so much for carving out some time for us. We appreciate it. I want to ask you something else about your time overseas, because you're familiar with this, the actual baseball. We started off this conversation talking about the foreign substances on the ball and what baseball's going through now. But, the pre-tackified baseball that they use in other leagues, is it just as simple as bringing that here to the United States?
It's pretty simple. Again, in 1994, when I went to Japan, every team in Japan, that's 12 teams, had a different ball. Okay, they had their own ball for their home games.
Sheesh.
And it was made by a different manufacturer. That was their way of spreading the wealth around the country to different companies. And my soapbox was up high saying, we need a standardized ball. It has to be one ball. And so now every team has a different ball for practice, and they use 500 balls for batting practice every day. But the game ball is unified. And that ball is made by Mizuno. It's hand wrapped. And as you say, each one has a little stickiness to it. Yes, if we did that, then you'd say no stickiness at all. You can't have any foreign substance, rather than, rosin and suntan lotion's okay. But if it's suntan lotion 103, you can't use it because 102, that kind of nonsense that's going around right now. That would solve an issue, and it would look really good too.
Bobby, we haven't chatted with you since you made the big announcement. So the decision, how'd you come to the decision to run for mayor of Stamford?
I was born and raised here. I had all my education here. My business was here for 40 years. My friends and family have been here forever. Been a taxpayer for 40 years. Stamford, Connecticut is as good a small city as there is, I think, most anywhere in the country. And our current mayor has done a very nice job, and the city's kind of going in the right direction. But coming out of COVID, I think there's a special kind of leadership that's needed. And if I've done anything in my adult life, I've learned to be a good leader. I learned from mistakes, and I learned from successes. And I think coming out of this situation, like coming out of 9/11, a lot is needed. We must change as we go along, and we must change properly. And I just think, at this time in my life, in the city where they are in their state, that an unaffiliated candidate is exactly what our city needs. And I'm running unaffiliated, and I have about 20 hours a day, about 7 days a week that I'm ready to make things happen and make things happen for the better.
Well, you're talking to one of your potential constituents, and Mark Malusis, who
guy.
would be voting. And I keep asking Moose, I'm like, so who's Bobby running against? He's like, I got no idea. I'm like, when's the election? He's like, I have no idea. Well, we know
see Bobby. My son practices at your training
academy.
complex. Yeah, at the academy. I've seen you there a number of times, Bobby. We got baseball gloves at that baseball shop, so I see you all the time talking to the guys over there. Everyone loves you, Bobby, in Stanford. I mean, there's not nobody has a bad word to say about Bobby Valentine. You're beloved.
Wow, there'll be some bad words. Obviously, hey, Moose,
you heard of politics?
I've done a lot. When you do a lot, it can't all be good, right? So, there's been some things that people have frowned about, and I get all that. But at the end of the day, I'll be knocking on your door. I'll see you over at the academy, and I'll tell you how our schools will be getting better, and how our traffic's going to flow better, how our small businesses are going to do better, and I think you'll like the conversation.
So,
absolutely,
Bobby, my question is, listen, you got a lot of connections and people you can hit up for donations. None bigger than the newest owner of the New York Mets, Steve Cohen. Did you go to the $14 billion man to ask him, for a little bit, pitch into the Bobby V campaign?
Well, interestingly enough, there's a maximum of $1,000, and our reporting date is due at the end of this month. So if anybody out there wants to go to BobbyValentine.com and help out the unaffiliated who has no machine behind them, I'd appreciate it. But yes, the Cohens are on the list. They have donated to the campaign. I'm proud to say that they've been friends for over 20 years, and their presence in our community is as great a presence as we have. And I think there are more like that our city can attract, and I probably could help close the deal on.
So, Bobby, November 2nd, that's the big day, right?
That's the big day. You have to be registered. I'll come by, make sure you sign the petition. I'll get you registered in Stanford, and you can cast your vote.
There you go, Bobby.
This is a very singular voter outreach to one specific voter, Mark Malusis, who's got no idea what's going on when it comes to politics in Stanford. Moose, no clue. But we know Bobby's running for mayor. Bobby, thank you. Always appreciate it. We'll check in with you again soon. Talking baseball with you is always a pleasure. So thank you, and good luck with the campaign.
Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are great. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.